family's search for their missing loved ones has now turned to grief.
The family is devastated. They've lost a daughter and a granddaughter.
The Clark County Sheriff's Office says they responded to this area near Southeast Sunset View and Wooding Road in Washougal Wednesday morning just before 10 o'clock for reports of someone saying they saw mannequins. When deputies arrived, they say they discovered two bodies just off this road down an embankment. Vancouver police detectives say they do believe it's missing mom and daughter, 27-year-old Meshay Melendez and 7-year-old Layla Stewart. Investigators say Meshay and Layla were last seen on March 12th with person of interest, 28-year-old Kirkland Warren. Officials say Warren was arrested on Sunday for charges he was facing before their disappearance.
I feel like falling in love. I'm gonna want to fuck something.
She put it on me, had me moaning, had me howl. Oh, mama.
March 22nd, 2023. A rural road outside Washougal, Washington. A dog walker notices something unusual in the ditch alongside the road. What they discover leads to a call to 911 that would end a 10-day search for answers. For 10 days, 27-year-old Meshay Melendez and her 7-year-old daughter Layla Stewart had been missing. For 10 days, their family had been searching, calling, hoping. And for 10 days, the community had been holding its breath, praying for good news. But on that Wednesday morning, the search came to a tragic end. This is a story about domestic violence, systemic failures, and two lives that should never have been lost. It's about warning signs that were ignored, a dangerous man who was released despite red flags, and a family's fight for accountability. Before we talk about what happened, you need to know who Meshay, Melendez, and Layla Stewart were. Meshay was 27 years old, a devoted mother, a sister, a friend. People who knew her described her as someone who put her daughter first in everything. She was trying to build a stable life for Layla, working to give her daughter the future she deserved. Layla was 7 years old, bright, lively, creative. She loved art and spending time with her mom. Photos shared at vigils after their deaths showed a mother and daughter who were inseparable. Two people who found joy in the simple moments of everyday life. They lived in Vancouver, Washington, a city just across the Columbia River from Portland, Oregon. It's the kind of place where neighbors know each other, where communities come together during hard times. And when Meshay and Layla were taken from that community, hundreds of people would gather to mourn and to demand answers. Because their deaths weren't random, they weren't unavoidable. They were the result of a cascade of failures by a system that was supposed to protect them. To understand what happened to Meshay and Layla, we have to go back to early March 2023. Meshay had an ex-boyfriend named Kirkland Warren. He was 40 years old, and he had a documented history of violence and run-ins with law enforcement. Their relationship had ended, but Warren hadn't accepted it. And in the days leading up to Meshay and Layla's disappearance, that behavior turned dangerous. According to police records and court documents, Warren and Meshay had a violent confrontation at her apartment in the Minnehaha neighborhood of Vancouver. The argument escalated. And then Warren did something that should have been a massive red flag. He fired shots at Meshay's home where her 7-year-old daughter lived before leaving the scene. Warren was arrested. He was charged with serious offenses related to that incident. But here's where the system began to fail Meshay and Layla. Warren posted bail. He was released. And despite having a history of alleged violence, including pending charges from other jurisdictions, he was back on the streets. Back in the same city as Meshay. Back in the same neighborhood. Free to continue the pattern of behavior that had already put her life in danger. Domestic violence advocates would later point to this case as a stark example of how vulnerable people can be when the criminal justice system doesn't adequately assess risk. How releasing a potentially dangerous defendant on bail can create a window of opportunity for tragedy. That window opened on March 12, 2023. March 12, 2023 started like any ordinary spring day in Vancouver. Neighbors and relatives saw Meshay and Layla going about their normal routine. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing suggested that within hours they would vanish. But by the end of that day, Meshay and Layla were gone. Family members tried calling, no answer. They tried texting, nothing. Hours turned into a day, then 2 days, then 3. Meshay wasn't the type to go silent. She stayed in touch with her family. She checked in regularly. This silence was wrong, terrifyingly wrong. On March 19th, 7 days after the disappearance, Meshay's car was found near the Vancouver Mall Drive area. It was abandoned, offering no clues about where she and Layla might be. The discovery only deepened the family's fear. If the car was there, where were Meshay and Layla? Were they hurt? Were they hiding? Or was the truth something far worse? For 10 agonizing days, the family lived in that uncertainty. 10 days of unanswered questions. 10 days of hoping against hope that they'd get a call saying Meshay and Layla had been found safe. But on March 22nd, that hope was shattered. The remains were found by a passerby walking their dog on a rural road outside Washougal, a small town east of Vancouver. Police were called to the scene, and what they found confirmed the family's worst fears. Meshay and Layla had been deceased for several days. The medical examiner would later determine that both had died from gunshot wounds. The news spread through Vancouver like wildfire. The same community that had been holding out hope for 10 days was now confronting an unbearable reality. Meshay and Layla hadn't run away. They hadn't been in hiding. They had been gone almost from the moment they disappeared while their family searched desperately for them. The grief was overwhelming, but so was the anger. Because by the time the remains were found, investigators already had a suspect in mind. And it was the same man who had fired shots at Meshay's home just days before she vanished. Kirkland Warren became the focus of the investigation almost immediately. Forensic evidence quickly linked him to the crime. What prosecutors would reveal in court painted a picture of calculated violence against a mother trying to protect herself and her child. The evidence told investigators this wasn't an impulsive act. This was planned, deliberate, someone who knew what they were doing and took steps to conceal it. Prosecutors also uncovered Warren's broader criminal history. He had pending charges in other states, including Arkansas, where he was reportedly awaiting trial for another serious alleged offense. That fact made the pre-trial release even more difficult to understand. A man with alleged connections to multiple violent incidents, including pending serious charges in another state, had been allowed to post bail and remain free in Washington. And during that time of freedom, 2 people lost their lives. The question that haunted everyone involved was simple but devastating. How did this happen? How was someone with Warren's history allowed to be anywhere near Meshay after he'd already fired shots at her home? These are the questions that would drive not just a criminal case, but also a larger conversation about how the justice system handles domestic violence cases. In September 2024, more than a year and a half after the deaths, Kirkland Warren changed his plea. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of aggravated first-degree murder in the deaths of Meshay Melendez and Layla Stewart. He also entered pleas on related charges. In October 2024, Warren appeared in Clark County Superior Court for sentencing. Family members spoke. They described Meshay and Layla as everything to me. They talked about the hole that had been torn through their lives. They asked the judge and the system how this could have been prevented. The prosecutor laid out the case in stark terms: the forensic evidence, the timeline, the way the crime had been concealed, the premeditated nature of what happened. Judge Suzanne Clark imposed the maximum sentence available: life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the family, it was a moment of grim finality. Warren would never walk free again. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars. But it didn't bring Meshay and Layla back, and it didn't answer the questions that had been haunting them for months. Why was Warren free in the first place? Who dropped the ball? And could this tragedy have been prevented? In September 2025, Meshay and Layla's family took the fight for accountability to a new level. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Clark County, alleging that the county's pretrial services and probation departments had failed to protect Meshay and Layla by not properly managing Warren's custody and monitoring. The lawsuit claims that despite Warren's violent history, including the shots fired at Meshay's home, the county did not do enough to keep him away from her. That they failed to follow policies designed to protect domestic violence victims from potentially dangerous defendants. The suit argues that had the county properly assessed the risk Warren posed, Had they taken his prior behavior seriously, had they not allowed him to post bail and remain free, Meshay and Layla might still be alive today. It's not just about financial compensation. It's about forcing the system to answer uncomfortable questions. It's about accountability. And it's about trying to prevent this from happening to another family.
They're not protected. DV has never really been taken seriously. The restraining orders are false security blankets. He was released with no GPS in the first place.
The lawsuit is still pending as of this recording. But win or lose in court, it has already accomplished something important. It has kept Meshay and Layla's story in the public eye. And it has forced a conversation about how the criminal justice system handles domestic violence cases. Because the truth is, Meshay and Layla's deaths weren't just the result of one person's actions. They were the result of systemic failures at multiple levels, failures that left a woman and her child vulnerable to someone who should never have been in a position to harm them. The deaths of Meshay Melendez and Layla Stewart expose uncomfortable truths about how we handle domestic violence in this country. Too often, warning signs are ignored, protective measures are inadequate, risk assessments fail to account for the full danger a defendant poses, especially when their criminal history crosses state lines. In Warren's case, he had pending charges in multiple jurisdictions, but the systems in those different states weren't communicating effectively. The lack of coordination created blind spots, and those blind spots became fatal. Domestic violence advocates used Meshay and Layla's case as a rallying cry for reform. They pushed for better risk assessment tools that consider a defendant's full criminal history, more robust enforcement of protective orders, improved communication between jurisdictions when someone has pending cases in multiple states, stricter oversight of defendants released on bail in domestic violence cases. Because here's what we know. Domestic violence often escalates. And when you combine a pattern of concerning behavior with inadequate supervision, the results can be catastrophic. Meshay's death is part of a larger, deeply troubling pattern. Research shows that people trying to leave dangerous relationships are at heightened risk. The period right after separation is when protective measures matter most. Meshay had ended her relationship with Warren. She was trying to move on, to build a safe life for herself and Layla. And the system that was supposed to protect her during that vulnerable time failed. Meshay Melendez was 27 years old. She was a mother who loved her daughter and was working to give her a better future. Layla Stewart was 7 years old. She loved art, loved her mom, and should have had her whole life ahead of her. In April 2023, hundreds of people gathered for their funeral. They came to honor Meshay and Layla, to grieve, and to demand change. That's the legacy Meshay and Layla's family is fighting for now. Not just justice for two people they loved, but change that could save future lives. Because the most painful truth about this case is that warning signs were present. If the system had worked the way it was supposed to, if communication between agencies had been better, if risk assessment had been more thorough, Meshay and Layla would likely still be alive today. Their deaths should serve as a wake-up call. Domestic violence is not a private matter. It's a public safety issue that requires coordinated, aggressive intervention. And when the system fails, when dangerous people slip through the cracks because of poor communication or inadequate oversight, real people pay the price. The best way to honor Meshay and Layla is to learn from this tragedy, to recognize warning signs, to take threats seriously, to demand better from our justice system. If this story affected you, I encourage you to share it. Domestic violence is a serious issue, and cases like Meshay and Layla's show us the importance of taking warning signs seriously. Subscribe to this channel for more in-depth true crime coverage that honors victims and examines the systems meant to protect us. Hit that like button and drop a comment. What changes do you think need to happen to prevent tragedies like this? Rest in peace, Meshay Melendez and Layla Stewart. Your story matters. Thank you for watching. Stay safe